plasma fire superheated the air of the derelict data archive, turning the space into a blinding arena of light and velocity. Commander Jackson Vance pressed his back against a glowing server rack, the vibration of near misses rattling his teeth, the scent of ozone sharp in his lungs. A Varrock execution squad advanced through the glowing aisles, their heavy plasma rifles humming with lethal, synchronized intent. Jackson's sidearm was nearly depleted. He braced himself for the final push. But then, a massive, imposing figure stepped out from the cover beside him, a sudden blur of motion. Kaylin. Her Varrock Vanguard armor was scarred, but her stance was an unyielding wall. She didn't raise her heavy repeater at Jackson. Instead, with a battle cry that shook the glass walls, she aimed squarely at her own executioners and unleashed a brilliant torrent of suppressing fire, physically shielding the human. She was bred for galactic conquest, but surviving a human's kindness might just be her hardest battle yet. It hadn't started this way. Just hours ago, mercy was a foreign concept to the Varrock, but one human's field kit was about to rewrite their entire philosophy. Earlier, Jackson had been navigating the bright, crystalline ash waste of Sector 4. The intense heat of the twin suns beat down on his tactical suit as he scanned the debris of a shattered obsidian spire, searching for vital supplies and any sign of his scattered squad. The landscape was a chaotic expanse of sharp edges and blinding reflections. That was when his proximity alarm blared. He found Kaylin pinned beneath a fallen structural beam, her advanced bioarmor sparking uncontrollably, a critical wound venting luminous blue vital fluid into the bright dust. Standard command protocol dictated a swift end. The Varrock took no prisoners, and they certainly offered no quarter. Jackson raised his rifle, his grip tight, the targeting reticle locking seamlessly onto her helmet. Kaylin's eyes met his through her fractured visor, defiant, expectant, perfectly prepared for the killing blow. To the Varrock Vanguard, compassion was a fatal weakness, a flaw to be burned out in basic training. Commander Vance didn't pull the trigger, and that single hesitation fractured an empire. Lowering his weapon, the sudden shift in posture making Kaylin flinch slightly, Jackson dropped to one knee beside his sworn enemy. He unsealed his emergency medical supplies. The electric shock of accidental touch flared between them as his hand brushed her searing armored plating. He worked rapidly, sealing the deep breach with rapid curing medgel, actively ignoring her confused, rigid defensive posturing. True resilience requires the profound courage to unlearn lifelong indoctrination, and as Jackson worked to stabilize her failing vitals, he watched the absolute certainty in her eyes begin to short-circuit. Compassion and empathy were disarming her entrenched hostility far more effectively than returning violence ever could. She watched him, paralyzed not by her injuries, but by the realization that the rigid, militaristic societal dogma of her people was inherently fragile when confronted with genuine, unconditional kindness. He finished the patch and offered his hand to help her stand, a silent, magnetic pull of an impossible alliance forged in the blazing heat. They had barely taken 10 steps from the wreckage when the execution patrol found them, forcing them to run. The air hummed with lethal energy. Plasma bolts scorched the pristine white walls of the data archive, turning the space into a blazing corridor of rapid-fire strikes. Kaylin moved like a tempest of light and precision. Jackson covered her flank, his pulse hammering against his ribs. They fought back to back, a seamless unit created in the sudden crucible of unexpected mercy. The heat of her armored shoulder pressing against his was a constant, grounding anchor amidst the blinding chaos. He gritted his teeth, tracking a flanking Varrock soldier through the glare and dropping him with a calculated, high-velocity pulse from his sidearm. Every time Kaylin unleashed a volley from her heavy repeater, the fierce vibration rattled up Jackson's spine. He caught her eye across the crossfire, a lingering gaze that spoke volumes of a magnetic pull neither could ignore. The terrifying relief of seeing her stand strong, willingly absorbing grazing hits to shield him, fueled his resolve. She was dismantling her former comrades with terrifying efficiency, perfectly predicting their rigid formations and turning their own aggressive tactics against them. A plasma charge struck the crystalline floor between them, sending a shockwave of brilliant white energy rippling through the aisle. Jackson stumbled, his vision swimming with spots of color. A Verac enforcer vaulted over a glowing command console, an energy blade drawn and humming with deadly force, aiming straight for the staggering human. Kaylin intercepted. It was a pure blur of motion. She caught the enforcer's descending wrist, the violent clash of advanced armor ringing sharply through the archive, and drove her gauntlet directly into his primary power cell. The enforcer collapsed in a cascade of dying sparks. The sudden cessation of gunfire left only the high-pitched whine of the surviving data servers. The execution squad lay defeated, their luminous visors flickering out. Kaylin stood breathing heavily, her weapon finally lowered. She turned to Jackson, her helmet retracting to reveal sharp features and eyes burning with a newly ignited clarity. The electric charge of proximity crackled in the air as Jackson stepped closer, immediately checking the emergency medical patch on her side. She didn't flinch away. Instead, she leaned slightly into his touch, the intense heat of her exertion radiating outward. "Command frequency is still open," she said, her voice a low, steady resonance. She stepped toward the central communications terminal, her fingers flying across the glowing, holographic interface. With a sequence of rapid, decisive keystrokes, Kaylin broadcasted her visual and audio signal across the entire Verac network in the sector. She didn't offer a declaration of war or a plea for understanding. She offered an absolute resignation. She publicly rejected her species' ruthless dogma, broadcasting the unassailable truth that a single, simple act of human kindness had fundamentally broken her lifelong indoctrination. She renounced her rank and her purpose as a living weapon, choosing instead the unprecedented freedom of an individual. Jackson watched her, profound respect mingling with the undeniable surge of chemistry pulling him toward her. She severed the planetary connection with a final keystroke and turned back to him. Above them, the brilliant light of the twin suns pierced through the shattered glass roof of the archive, illuminating a path completely devoid of orders or empires. "Where do we go?" she asked, the magnetic pull drawing her right back to his side. Jackson caught her hand, the physical connection solid and undeniably real. "Anywhere, but backward." Together they stepped out of the shattered ruins and walked into the blazing, sunlit unknown,